Good morning. Yeah, I printed that one out and I thought, you know what, that's going to be too small. The bigger you go, the easier it is, isn't it?
That's the theory.
But the longer it takes. So, Jill, have you ever done gouache before? Gouache, Shirley? Have you done gouache before, Shirley? No? You've done a bit. You've all done a bit.
A little bit.
So gouache is actually, it's more like watercolour, but it's very opaque because it's got chalk in it. So that means you can put your light colours on top of your dark colours. So it's a bit easier. So you actually, Jill, might find this less of an annoyance. Maybe.
Why do you think I'm annoyed at
No, because it's not that you don't tell me everything. But what's really good about it is, so you've got the vibrancy and the opacity like acrylics, but even when your gouache is on your paper dry, you can dampen it and reblend it. So you've not lost it. So for me, it's quite good for doing blendy stuff. Really, I think anything bigger than A4, I tend to use acrylics. Anything A4 or smaller, I use gouache because it just gives me that extra flexibility. Because it's got chalk in it, it's a much heavier paint than watercolour. So, you know, if you tried to do a wet in wet, it wouldn't spread because it's not big enough. But it does mean you can use coloured backgrounds. A bit like when you work with pastels or something, you can use a coloured background that's either complementary or a colour that will work well with the object, or a colour that's the main colour of the object. I just thought grey would look quite nice. We can lighten parts of it. This is the Clairefontaine paint-on paper. This is just the grey pad version, which is multi-techniques, and you can see it gives it away. You can use ink, paint, pencil, pen, pastel, and colouring pencils on it. So it hasn't got much of a tooth, but it's really useful. You get 30 sheets in this pad, but they now do a multicoloured pad with greys, blacks, blues, whites, and parchmenty colours. So it's like natural colour, which are really useful for gouache or pastels and stuff like that. So I've got my colours. I've got black and white. So that's the difference with against watercolour. You need white with gouache. White is your best friend. It's also your best friend in watercolour, white gouache, isn't it, really, I suppose? Yeah. It helps cover everything up. I've got black, I've got raw sienna and burnt sienna. My burnt sienna tube is new. So I've got a bit of gunk come out there. Ultramarine, and that should have been a little bit of cadmium red, but it just came out rather quickly. So black and white, raw sienna. You could use yellow ochre, it's fine, but we've just got more tubes of raw sienna. Yellow ochre is currently globally short in every medium. Before Christmas it was sap green, wasn't it, Jackie? We couldn't get sap green acrylic paint for lovely money. And in November it was matte varnish. Couldn't get any of that. So we have phases where there are certain things at the moment that are just, they're either stuck on tankers, stuck somewhere. It's just the way it is. So raw sienna, it kind of works better with our owl. I liked him because he's got nice long legs in this.
Is that ultramarine though?
Ultramarine. Don't need much, but that grey is quite a blue grey, isn't it, on his back? All right. I tend to use much smaller fiddly brushes with gouache. But we'll see how we get on. So the more you dilute gouache, the more transparent it becomes. So if it's very runny, you'll get the grey coming through. If it's very thick, you won't. So just play about with it. If I do a bit of white and a bit of raw sienna.
I presume you penciled it in.
I've traced it, absolutely.
You've traced it?
I flipping have. Life's too short on a Monday morning when I'm rushing about. We'd had a power cut in the town centre last night, apparently. Jackie had one. For several hours. I don't think it was the storm related, but...
Okay.
White
I like
and-
raw sienna.
Raw sienna and white.
Sienna.
So what I can do, you see, is if I dilute this colour a little bit more, I can do it so some of the grey will show through even more, and it will give me a nice mid-tint. Because this is a card, it's a mixed media card, or multimedia card, it doesn't really matter what you call it. It doesn't take tons of water, so it's not like watercolour in that sense. It's not like watercolour paper. You can use watercolour paper for gouache. I just prefer this. The difference is, now you know, I always bleat on about watercolour dries 30% lighter. Gouache dries darker. So in actual fact, it goes very matte because it's got a lot of chalk in it. It goes very matte, very dark and dull. Like emulsion paint, I guess, is the best way to describe it. You know, when you put your colour on your wall and then half an hour later it's a different colour altogether. It's very much like that. So sometimes you do have to play it by ear a little bit. I've bought a box of gel pens as well because I forgot those last week. And you may want gel pens to help you with finer lines. If I increase the raw sienna a little short strokes. So with gouache, it's all about, you're building up layers, but you don't have to worry about it so much because I know I can cover it up at any point. So it's a bit more freeing than watercolour. And it's a bit more flexible than acrylics. And I'm not saying, oh, it's better than acrylics, because
Oh, it must be.
everything is annoying or not annoying, depending on what you started out in, isn't it, really? Because I know a lot of acrylic students can't work with watercolour. And others that started in watercolour really struggle with acrylics. So, I don't know, which did you start in, Marie? You did a bit of everything straight off, didn't you?
Watercolouring. I don't know, I think I might have done acrylics.
Acrylics
I
first.
prefer acrylics first.
You prefer watercolour to acrylics, don't
It's
you?
been a long time now. to
What about you,
decide.
Robert? Have you got a preference?
Not sure anymore. Used to be acrylics, but now particularly like watercolour.
I think once you get a certain
And it's quick.
level,
Hold the speed.
I think with watercolour, what is nice is you haven't got a faff. You can just flip up your palette and start, isn't it? With acrylics and oils and gouache, you've got to squeeze it all out and you've got to do all of this. But the good thing about gouache is, when I do my pet portraits, I've got a big tile and I leave all the colours there because when they're dry, I can use them again. So I'll just spritz them or put a bit of extra colour on top and it works just as well. Which you can do with watercolours, but you cannot with acrylics. So you have to be a bit stingier with your acrylics because once it's there and it's dried, that's it.
Because on that watercolour challenge, which I've been watching,
Yeah.
they do, some of them spend 2/3 of their time on the sketch.
Yes.
And you think, gosh, I'll never get it done. And then they whisk on the paint. don't
Yeah.
they?
Well, a lot of the time with watercolour, it is about filling in the gaps, isn't it? It's like it is. You just, as long as you've got a decent drawing, you can probably fudge it just by putting a wash of colour on. I've only seen one this last week of this last week's lessons on watercolour challenge, and that was when they were doing the Four Winds Temple. That was quite interesting to watch. And this is just neat raw sienna, just slightly diluted. And they were really fixated raw sienna or yellow ochre, because it looks quite like yellow ochre, doesn't it, at the minute?
I haven't got raw sienna.
Have you got yellow ochre? Yes, that's fine. It's almost identical. Your raw sienna is just a little bit more brown. Yes. And raw sienna is the natural state of burnt sienna before it's roasted. It's the same as...
I don't think they do burnt ochre.
No, some places do burnt ochre. Sometimes it's called red ochre, because when you roast yellow ochre, it goes red.
In Provence we saw them with the ochre mines
Yeah.
and the factory and the way they roasted it.
Yeah, well, actually, the back wall of the Reindeer pub in Parsons Street, it's all Horton stone, which is yellow ochre. And there are areas of it that are red. And that is from the musket fire in the Civil War, where the hot musket hit the wall and roasted the stone. So you've got roasted oak, you've got red ochre there. So if you want extra pigment, nip up the back of the Reindeer car park and scrape a bit off with a penknife, absolutely. Yeah, so it's got roasted stuff there, which is fascinating, I think.
Just do the different tones on that by eye.
Yeah, I'm just shoving on the lighter bits. That's your technical term.
Shove it on.
Shoving on. But I'm not adding any white to it. I will lighten it a little, because you can see it's as it's drying, it's lightening a little bit, but there are elements that I want to lighten a little bit more. So what I want to do with this, a bit of this raw sienna, is I want to do the darker browny bit. So if I add a tiny bit of black, well, that's quite a lot of blackberry actually, a bit of ultramarine. But you'll find that gouache goes a very, very long way. You only need small amounts of it for it to work. So again, this is going to dry darker still. And I'm making it a bit patchy, so it does look like a paint by numbers at the moment. And that's all right. Not going to cry about that. Because I can show you how you can get around it. So this is just a little flat brush I'm using at the moment. I haven't used anything else. Well, I kind of use my flat brushes on its side rather than the full flat, but I can twist it. So when you've got a flat brush on its edge, it does give an idea of more like a round brush. So hopefully what I can do here is have a bit of a, oh, let's do a bit up here as well. So I've got lots of lines, lots of stripy bits where it should be a bit more mottled. So with just a clean damp brush, I can pick up the colours and blend them. Which you could do in watercolours, to be fair, but we tend not to. The beauty of gouache is as well, it's very difficult, not impossible, but it is very difficult to get cauliflowers in your work. I'm sure people will prove me wrong this morning, but cauliflowers are a bit tricky to do because the pigment is so heavy. But you don't want to scrub too hard because that's where you'll go through your card. You don't want to do that. Where are they this week at Watercolour Challenge, have they said? Because it was Devon the first week, wasn't it? And then they were Yorkshire last week, wasn't it? With AD. I thought he was really good explaining things.
He was.
Good.
He was a bit more positive
Yeah.
than the lady the week before.
Yeah. Lisa, was it Lisa? Because you want constructive advice, you know, because like I say to you, if you've done something wrong, you know it's wrong. You don't need me to come and tell you that it's wrong. But I can tell you what you can do right, or what you have done right. Oh, that's a nice cup of tea. So you can see actually now that body's dried, you can see far more grey through it. So that means where the light is hitting, if I just use a little bit of white neater, I can just pop that on straight away. If you're not sure gouache is for you, I mean, there are some more affordable sets that are out there. We've got them in, but you could. One easy option is that you just buy white gouache and mix it with your watercolours, because that's what it used to be a long time ago. White gouache used to be known as body colour back in the Renaissance. So it's about, gouache is about 500 years old. It was used a lot in portraiture to add body to the watercolour. So if they wanted skin tones to be more opaque, they would use white gouache and mix it with the watercolours. Tell you who did it really well, Pre-Raphaelites. They used that a lot. And Sir Nicholas Hilliard, the portrait painter to Queen Elizabeth I, he used body colour with his watercolours an awful lot. So that's an option. You can just, I'm just chopping in with my white on here, so it will mix in a little bit. I don't want a lot of texture, but enough. Because I don't want it to look like I can't be bothered and I've just run out. There's that bit there, quite a bit of white there. There. It's looking a bit like an owl, isn't it? Looking a bit like Summit. And you'll have a lot more time to do this than me, of course. So you can really fiddle with it. But that I do like. I didn't think I was a fiddly person. But I've found that with gouache, I really am quite fiddly. Right, if I use white and quite a lot of water, I can map in the shape. Now I know this is going to dry more grey, so I'm not too stressed about this. So let's do a stripy face. You can see around the eye the feathers radiate from the eye out and down. I think barn owls, I'm not a very owly person. My mother was a massive owl lover, but I'm not necessarily an owl lover. But they do remind me of my mom. She liked owls and butterflies. But barn owls, I think, are my favourite. Driving on the A361 yesterday, I saw, as we get towards the, we know where they're doing all the warehouses, the field before that, before the railway bridge that's no longer there, 4 deer just in the field, just having a bit of a chat to each other. It was so nice to they didn't look like muntjacs though, they looked more deer-like, proper shape, rather than the little short stumpy ones.
I see more deer around our village than muntjacs.
Do you?
Yeah. occasionally get a muntjac.
Oh, how lovely. I've seen a muntjac down my lane.
Used to get muntjacs in our garden.
We did it
Not
one
now.
time, not anymore.
Oh. Right, so that's, you can see how dull that is. So that means I can add more water or less water and build up the layers. But it's getting there already, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can go home now. Add a bit more white. I'll probably end up using mostly this brush because it's really useful. It's Inspire Your Heart with Art Day today. So it's good that you're in an art class. Hopefully inspiring your heart with art. What is good with gouache as well is if you've got old acrylic brushes that have gone like that, perfect for using gouache and fur or grass. So a little bit of highlight. So when a brush splits, I always keep it because I think it will come in handy at some point. Because he's got more of a ginger around his eye, hasn't he? He's got that lighter tone still. Build him up. Yeah, he's looking a bit like an owl. Got to name him as well, haven't we? We've always got to name the owl. Name the animal that you're drawing. Mike.
No, that's terrible for now.
You think? What about Bartholomew? Bartholomew sounds wise, doesn't it, Bartholomew? So I'm just going a little bit neater with the white. Because he's got those little frilly bits around his edge. Now my brush, even though it's a new brush, when you're not using a lot of water, they do tend to split, and that's okay. So we'll go with a bit of raw sienna. There's still white on my brush, a little bit of black, a little bit of blue, a little bit of red. You could use burnt sienna, I suppose. We can pop that on. They're doing a big coastal, I think it's Prestatyn, they're doing a huge wall to stop the coastal erosion to save about 1,500 homes on the seafront. But there are certain areas of Wales that won't get that. Fairbourne won't get it, which is sad. That's where we go every year. So they said by 2054, Fairbourne will largely be unsafe to live and it'll be underwater because it's reclaimed land, which is sad. They have made a few bits of flood defences up, but it's funny, there are people complaining that they won't see their sea view with this wall, but I think if without the wall, they'll definitely see the sea view because it'll be in the living room. What can you do?
I don't think you can. There's a lot of this down in Devon, and the thing is, you cannot. It's nature. You cannot save it all.
No.
Because if you buy a house too close to a cliff, it's a risk you take.
It is absolutely.
It costs so much money to hold that for sea.
Well, without the coastal defences as well, will their insurance be as valid? Because, you know, if it's going to flood.
It'd be very expensive.
Yeah.
Place Berlin Gap we went to, near the Seven Sisters, not far from Eastbourne. There's a cafe there which
more
part
black.
of, you know, the garden's missing now,
Oh,
and they've drawn lines. There was at some museum as well. They've drawn lines where the cliff will be in which year.
oh, like
The floor.
a bit like a sundial, but a countdown to doom, I suppose, isn't it? Really? Because a lot of the coast is reclaimed land, isn't it? I know. For Fairbourne, it is below sea level.
The limestone's
It's only a matter of time.
susceptible to erosion.
It's just sad that in my lifetime, it's not going to be there. But then it's always going to be in somebody's lifetime, isn't it? I suppose. Right, so I'm doing a few little slightly darker lines. He's coming on, isn't it? It's coming on. He's looking a bit owlish. I'm leaving his... Normally I do his eyes first, but I'm not doing that today. So if I do black and blue... What time are we on?
33.
Black, blue and white. You see, I chose grey because, for the background, because I'm not sure, depending on how this dries, I might use a bit of a washy white behind it over the darker part of the feathers to bring it forward. I don't know yet. I'll have to wait and see. I can't believe how windy it is today. I lost my scarf twice this morning when I'd left the house. Unravelled from around my neck. And
It was windy in Aberdeen, wasn't it? It had been blown out to sea then.
oh no. Well, it's got to be. I don't normally hear the wind in my house, but I kept me awake all night. So it's got to be pretty bad because I wasn't expecting it here. They said it would be is it the east? The east coast that would get it more? Or the west? I can't remember. East. So I thought, oh, we'll be all right because we're in the middle. And we never get anything here.
We had a lovely day yesterday, though. Yeah, gorgeous day.
It was lovely. Calm before the storm. So I'm kind of doing a bit of dry brush work with that, even though there's not a lot of texture. So we do a few dark bits. A sip of tea. It's gone cold now. Where's that? What is really interesting with gouache is that you dip your brush, just the tip of your brush, in water, and it really dilutes the gouache quite substantially. So it's not like watercolour where you need to work up loads and loads and loads of colour. It does it anyway. So I'm just trying to work out where these feathers are. Here. And then it's quite dilute, but if I clean my brush, I can blend it in a little bit more. When you're cleaning your brush with gouache, because the pigment is a lot heavier, you do need to clean it a bit more vigorously because it'll just stay on your brush. So you'll think you've cleaned it by watercolour standards, and in fact, you haven't. And then you'll go on and it will tint the rest of your colour, which, you know, you might want, or you may not. I think I need a bit more of that grey on here. Right, let me switch to a thin brush, a little babby one, because I want to do a really dark grey, because he's got those lovely speckles on him, and those dots where they're black with white. Now you could do the white dots in gel pen when it was dry. Don't ruin your gel pen. And I bought some to sell. No, I'm selling them, you're buying them, you're not selling them. I bought some to buy. Bit of a runny black outline. I will probably fiddle with this more so afterwards. Went to the antique shop yesterday around the corner from me, just around here. I haven't been for a while. I picked up this, it's a child's toy, but it's a child's toy of a really old shop till. And I thought, I've got to get that. It was only £10 or something. So it's in the shop now. It might be my good luck symbol. Because I need something. So I switched for, you might be wondering why I've switched for a round brush for this, but the round brush will give me a point. And these dots are pointy, aren't they? They're pointy, round one bit and pointy the next. So it's to give me a little bit more shape. Well, it hasn't got loads of them though. There's not as many as I thought there were, but we'll put them on nonetheless and see how they go. Darken a few things there. Let's do his eyes black. Eye. You can't see that other one, can you really? You just see a bit of a line. I'll put it in because it looks better. So, Jill, I reckon you'll fall in love with gouache. We'll find out, won't we?
You'll hear me moaning.
Oh, I wouldn't say you moan. It's just a commentary on your creativity, that's all it is.
I use that one on it.
I always say I don't moan, I comment.
Being kind. Yes.
I've just got a lot to comment about. I'm using white gouache for the white dots to start with, just in case, because at least they'll sink in and tone down a little bit, whereas a gel pen might be a bit too oomphy. So I'll do that underneath the black. So that the eye is still too wet for me to do anything with. Let me go in with a beak colour, which is a bit of some of this dirty stuff that I've got here that's neither raw sienna nor grey. Put that on. It's very sharp, isn't it? Look at that. Oof. A bit darker on the tip there. So if you're working very wet with the gouache, it will spread probably more than you want it to. So sometimes you do have to be a bit patient. But if you notice, I've not even bought a hairdryer today because it is drying quickly. However, I know, if I show you that now, I know that I can blend it. So it doesn't matter. I'm not worrying about anything today with gouache. I know I've got control over it. You like gouache, Mary, don't you? Do you?
I've done it too. I don't use anyone else. I enjoyed it, yeah.
Different.
We did a bird. Food tit, I think, didn't we?
Yeah, we did one on wooden panel as well, didn't we? A while ago. I know Pauline and Jenny loved that one.
I enjoyed it. I think it's only been animals, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think I tend to do animals. It's just a little bit. I've added a bit of burnt sienna and white. It's a bit easier with animals. With landscapes, it can be quite tricky, you see, because there's just a lot of area to fill.
But you use it for your animal portraits, don't you?
Yeah, for the pet portraits, I use gouache all the time because it just works really well. for layering, for fur and feathers. I did a macaw parrot. I don't know if you were at the, when I took over the Art Society at the shop, I did a macaw parrot on grey mount board in gouache.
Yes, it did.
A really big one. And that was useful. Because you can just build it up. And I really do, that's what I love about it, is the fact that I can just keep adding or taking away or painting over. He hasn't got much light in his eye, has he? So that'll work. Oh, see, now that's an owl. I need to slightly tint his back leg. I'll use this browny colour again. And that was the raw sienna, ultramarine and black, I think, that I've still got on my... They've got very long legs, haven't they, owls? Very long legs. And that will help bring the white out a little bit more. Now his claws and his feet are a bit hidden, aren't they, by the, conveniently, by the wood. So I'll just do a little bit that I can see. Yesterday, actually, driving to the antique, in that field down there, it's always full of birds of prey, isn't it? There was about 5 or 6, I don't know what they are.
They're buzzards.
They are buzzards. I couldn't work out if they're buzzards or sparrowhawks or something.
I've seen the odd one or two.
Yesterday there was about 4
But sometimes
in the
there's a couple
field.
of dozen.
Yes, amazing.
It's only that field.
On the A361, the where you've got the turn into William Scott, the field directly opposite that, full of birds of prey, usually
You can
buzzards.
normally see them on the hedge.
When I've been going to Chatham, there's one on the road to
I
Chatham.
don't know why.
Yes.
It sits on a tree near the A361.
It's funny, it is, because it's only over that
I
field.
Stop and have a look because there's a little pull in, isn't there?
Yes.
You get quite a few around the
Labour.
road there.
A week
There's
ago
nothing
on
today.
Sunday, I was going to Hinton actually, but between Chipping Warden and Byfield, there was a series of buzzards sitting like marshalled on trees in a row, 6 of them.
That's cool. I love them.
They're beautiful. Huge.
Big
You don't realise
things.
how big they are.
No.
We actually pulled over and their car was there and it was, I could have put my hand out the window and took it. It was on the hedge and it sat there for ages. We was watching it.
Well, you could have tried.
The broken wing
Yeah,
in our village when we were on a walk,
Really?
and we took it to the
It's very
vet.
good. There's more. This is just a field of buzzards. Very good.
Is it?
Had it, yeah.
And I mean, one year I just
Amazing.
lost count of them.
I mean, I think it was,
I mean, it was
one
on
of
the
young ones
hedge.
was about that big.
And there was
We
it-
found, you know,
But there was also seagulls in there as well.
They're not when you, yeah.
Right, the wooden bit, I've mixed raw sienna and ultramarine to make a sludgy green. And I'm just going to make this sludgy green.
Feathers do not weigh a ton of feathers only weighs a ton.
Sorry, that was raw.
Raw sienna and ultramarine. So it's kind of a greeny brown colour.
last week,
Sorry, missed that by.
Ultramarine and raw sienna. And water.
on my walk around the village, I saw a couple of foxes last week. One of them was quite close and he sort of tailed off into the wood. But you know, displaying this gorgeous bushy tail.
Bushy tail.
Beautiful. And then they had a kestrel as well. Near us. Quite often see this kestrel, but last week he or she was sitting
Back
on
up
a
in your
branch
way.
about 10 feet away.
Without being silly, doing this trunk could wreck the whole thing, couldn't it?
Yes. But there's no
You know,
pressures
You get a
there.
lovely owl and then you do the trunk.
But, yeah, you could... I was trying to think what else you could turn it into, but you could stand it on something else. But I don't know what else would be more useful. But if you play around with your whites and your ochres and your ultramarines and your other colours. So it's a nice, interesting colour. You'll be all right. Because it doesn't have to look like that one, does it?
No, it won't. I'm sure it won't.
So I've added a bit of
Trunks. Have
white.
you seen that video that goes on Facebook of an elephant drawing a picture?
Oh, I've seen an elephant and a pig. I've seen a Picasso he's called,
Oh.
and he will paint normally, and I've seen a dog do it as well.
Right.
I'm quite jealous because they're really talented.
He drew a picture of an elephant in a tree.
He's lovely, isn't he? And he does it all the time. He's not like forced to do it. He will go and ask for a paintbrush, and he'll just paint on his canvas. Yeah,
The way he holds the paint.
a pig and an elephant.
A pig or paint?
Yeah,
With what? A trotter?
a brush in his mouth.
Oh, I always see what's going on.
And I've seen a dog, and the dog wrote his own name. I mean,
Oh, easy.
Maybe.
but I think the dog one was done by someone pointing a stick at where he had to go. But the elephant was doing it all by himself.
I had an elephant, didn't it? Yes.
He's just so delicate then, you know. Very
But it looked like he was thinking about where he was putting things as well, which I thought was quite fascinating. So I'm adding bits of creamy white. Yeah, we don't think, we just shove it on and hope for the best.
Harry just doesn't see things in two-dimensional. He never looks at the telly. He's
No.
never interested.
Oh, my dog was obsessed with the Andrex. Do you remember the Andrex dog? When the music would come on, wherever he was in the house, he'd just bound into the living room and sit and watch the Andrex dog. Because there's YouTube channels for cats now, isn't there, for pets? That you can, if you're out on the out for a while, you can put a YouTube channel on, and it's like fish, or it's like things that move across the screen just to keep the cats entertained.
You could just put the cat out, couldn't you?
Yeah, you could.
And lock the cat in the
I'll do some darks now. Bit of black. So you can see how much I've not used, you know, which is brilliant. Let's go burnt sienna because I haven't used much of that. Burnt sienna and black for some dark parts because the light is coming from the right, and you can see that from his face and his light bits.
Slightly behind.
Yes. Well, you can. I might do that as well. How are we for time?
10 to?
Well, what time do I start? About 5 past, I suppose. So I've got to shut up soon. Impossible. Have I bitten off more than I can chew? 45-minute owl. I might use a bit more. Something. Right, if I want to, so I will add highlights and stuff, but if I want to brighten the behind, if I just show you where we're at now. Like that. Well, that's all right, isn't it? If I want to make it glow a little bit here, so we've got a bit of light on the animal, light on the background, a little bit of chiaroscuro. What I'll do is I'll just wet the background. Now, this is what can make or break it. So you may not want to do this at all.
See how it goes.
Yeah, if I ruin this, then you don't have to do it.
Oh, it's very wet, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm wetting it first, slightly more than the area that I want to put it on. So I'm preparing the paper. I'm not scrubbing, because if I scrubbed, I'll end up going through, and that's kind of pointless. So if I go with a bit of white, or you know, a little bit of raw sienna and a little bit of ultramarine, so it's like a very pale colour. And I'm just going to tint the background behind. Now it won't do much, and you won't see it until it's totally dry. And I haven't got a hairdryer today, but if I just lighten the bit where it's darker, and then fade it in, you see. Maybe I could go a little bit brighter, right up against his back. But I don't want to scrub, because you can see the bits of card already showing through, which means I'm on dangerous territory. Maybe I'll leave it like that. I could do the same here, but a bit darker if I wanted to, but I'll see how that goes. There's some darker feathers here. Like that. Actually, he has got grey on that chest, hasn't he? There. That's grey, isn't it? It's not just shaded white. That bit is grey. So we'll put a bit of that grey on there. And the beauty of that is I can just pick up that grey and shove it on. Right, I don't think I'm going to do any more for you, but I will probably fiddle during the class. So that's him done. I may darken the front here. I may do a grey wash, a black wash over that. I don't know. But you can see how it builds up in a quicker way than you could in watercolour, because you'd have to work from light to dark in watercolour. But you can get the bare bones of it very, very quickly and easily. So I might brighten up the highlights. I might use a gel pen for the really bright white areas and see how we get on. Next week, what am I inflicting on you next Monday? Oh, a big old mossy tree in acrylics. We can't get out a big mossy tree, can we? We have to do a big mossy tree every now and again. So it's acrylics next week, a big old mossy tree. You could, if you're into gouache, you could use gouache. Or you could do it in watercolour. You could. So thank you very much. So I look forward to seeing what you do. I will take a photograph of this as it is and post it under the reference image. And then I will carry on fiddling and then take another photograph so you can see it with another hour's fiddle, if I do. But I don't need to do much to it, actually. Maybe just a bit more texture on the wings. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.